Well, good morning. It is Monday in the third week of Lent, and this morning I'll read to you from the first reading from the second book of Kings. Naaman, the army commander of the king of Aram, was highly esteemed and respected by his master, for through him the Lord had brought victory to Aram. But valiant as he was, the man was a leper. Now the Arameans had captured in a raid on the land of Israel a little girl who had become the servant of Naaman's wife. "If only my master would present himself to the prophet in Samaria," she said to her mistress, "he would cure him of his leprosy." Naaman went and told his lord just what the slave girl from the land of Israel had said. "Go," said the king of Aram, "I will send along a letter to the king of Israel." So Naaman set out, taking along 10 silver talents, 6,000 gold pieces, and 10 festal garments. To the king of Israel, he brought the letter which read, "With this letter I am sending my servant Naaman to you, that you may cure him of his leprosy." When he read the letter, the king of Israel tore his garments and exclaimed, "Am I a god with power over life and death, that this man should send someone to me to be cured of leprosy? Take note. You can see he is only looking for a quarrel with me." When Elisha, the man of God, heard the king of Israel had torn his garments, he sent word to the king, "Why have you torn your garments? Let him come to me and find out that there is a prophet in Israel." Naaman came with his horses and chariots and stopped at the door of Elisha's house. The prophet sent him the message, "Go wash 7 times in the Jordan, and your flesh will heal, and you will be clean." But Naaman went away angry, saying, "I thought he would surely come out and stand there to invoke the Lord his God, and would move his hand over the spot, and thus cure the leprosy. Are not the rivers of Damascus, the Abana and the Pharpar, better than all the waters of Israel? Could I not wash in them and be cleansed?" With this he turned about in anger and left. But his servants came up and reasoned with him. "My father," they said, "if the prophet had told you to do something extraordinary, would you not have done it? All the more now, since he said to you, 'Wash and be clean.' And should you do as he said?" So Naaman went down and plunged into the Jordan 7 times, at the word of the man of God. His flesh became again like the flesh of a little child, and he was clean. He returned with his whole retinue to the man of God. On his arrival, he stood before him and said, "Now I know that there is no God in all the earth except in Israel." The word of the Lord. Thanks be to God. As I hear this reading, I think, and I'm not exactly sure why, but of Pope Francis's current trip through Iraq. Some of you may have been following the news a little bit, although it's not really in the news. But if you look at any Catholic news, you'll know that the Pope is in Iraq and he's visiting the war-torn Christian cities, particularly in Mosul and other places as well. And I was struck about something, and I'm a bit ignorant about things in the Middle East, to be honest with you, but as you know, I grew up under the Iraq War and the war in Afghanistan. I was in 8th grade during September 11th. And I had never seen a picture or a video of people in Iraq rejoicing. To my knowledge, I had never seen it. And I had never seen a video or a picture of someone in Iraq or of a child having fun. It just kind of struck me. Every image, for the last 20 years, had seen images of children crying, of people dying, of war-torn, everything. I'm sure you've seen it as well. And so when I saw these pictures, it just struck me that life goes on there too. It's like regular life, joys and struggles of celebrations and parties and rejoicing. And, you see people in the videos with masks on, and some people don't have masks on, and you kind of see this is sort of normal life. And I think that very often we get obsessed with our own standard of life and our own vision of what a good life would be. And we think that we need all of these things, you know. So, I mean, I'm sitting here in my own room, but I got plenty of stuff, and I got a big rectory here, and I got a nice car, and, you know, there's no bombs going off on the street corner, like historically anyways in the recent decades in Iraq. And so I can kind of come to think that, you know, I need all of these things to be happy, and I need all of these things to love God. You know, even in the parish, in the church, you know, you need, well, I guess you need air conditioning, and you need plenty of heat, and you need, you know, the good sound system, and you need up-to-date everything. And it's good to have all those things. But when I see this picture of these children in Iraq, and then when the Pope visits a cathedral, I think it was, where ISIS had used as a shooting range for 2 years, and they had restored it. It's still much more simple than, you know, than St. Robert's or Holy Family Church. But nonetheless, you realize that God doesn't need all sorts of extravagant things, but he needs simplicity of the gift of faith. Without that, everything else falls by the wayside. And I think this is the story, or the point of the story, of Naaman the Syrian. And so he's a commander of the army. He's perhaps used to things being very well done, very fancy. He can't even imagine doing something of any meaning if it's not with some sort of extravagance and some sort of splendor. So he sets out to come to the king of Israel for his healing from leprosy with 6,000 pieces of gold. That's a lot of gold. 10 silver talents, 10 festal garments. I mean, he is loaded. He is filthy rich. And he comes, and Elisha doesn't even come out of his house, it seems. He sort of calls out from the house. He stops at the door of the house, and the prophet sent him the message. Elisha doesn't even come out to greet him, so here Naaman is expecting this royal welcome. And Elisha just says, in faith, dip in the river 7 times. You could see in there a prophecy of the 7 sacraments, which similarly seem to be rather simple, rather unextravagant. You know, I've said this before, we'd wish we could see the heavens open up and we could see the glory of God, and yet God gives us 7 simple signs of his love. That will be a more sure sign for us than any other miracle we will ever receive. So Naaman dips in the river, but only begrudgingly, because he says, well, I could have gone in any river. I could have done this at home. Why am I called out here? And he says, you're called out here, I'm paraphrasing it really, so that you could have faith. You could have done all sorts of extravagant things at home in your own land and have been loved and have been fawned over. But only by leaving your home and your country and submitting to Elisha are you required to have faith. And so Naaman is cured. Not because of some special aspect of the water, although the Jordan River is a very special place, but because of his faith. And the water was something that was a place where the faith was enlivened. In our own reflection, in our own life, maybe we look at all the things we think we need for a life of faith, all the things we need even just for daily happiness. And we perhaps can take a lesson from, well, obviously from our scripture, from the story of the cleansing of Naaman the Syrian, but also in the recent news stories of the Pope going to Iraq and to see those children whom the news has never portrayed before as being anything other than something to be pitied, and realize we actually don't need a whole lot to be able to rejoice, to be able to have deep faith. So that's all I got for you this morning. Have a good Monday of the 3rd week of Lent.